Send in the red shirts.
I called it. I called it. Go check out the last episode. Go check out last episode review. I called it, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. First off, let's just get into the episode. Man, I tell you, it starts off, it's beautiful. I mean, this show continues to impress me with its visuals. Just beautiful flyovers of the Discovery. There's a planet set, planet Harlack, that just stunning. You would think you're watching something that's being made on a Hollywood feature film blockbuster tentpole budget. It's just, the show looks incredible. Overall, this was a great episode. There was action, there was a lot of reveals, there was a lot of character development, but I'm a little conflicted with this episode. While I enjoyed it, there were some things about it that bothered me. I think most of them were along the lines of like plotting and scenes that I felt just went on too long, scenes that revealed certain things that we all kind of knew, but the plotting took so long to just get to the point. And at one point I was just like, okay, I got it. Okay, let's get there. Scenes that that lasted just for a couple minutes that I thought should have been held off for another episode to deal with what we're seeing here. I'll get into all the details later. But yeah, there were some things I had issues with the episode. One of them I'm going to say was at the beginning. It starts off kind of slow. I like at the beginning how they show us a montage of Mike's, the mirror universe, how they show Mike beginning her day as captain of an Imperial starship. Oh, God. I'm trying to avoid the Star Wars references, but the writers just won't let me. Anyway, I like how they show that montage, Saru being her slave and how she has to deal with that. She kind of almost slips up by calling him by his name. I also like the fact that apparently Seneko was working out for this role because we saw some leg, and yeah, she's hitting the Stairmaster. More power to you, girl. Anyway, I just thought that went on a little bit too long. The internal monologue that Mike is going through just seems like it drags on. Maybe it would have worked if it had been a captain's log. I mean, she could have done a secure channel and transported it back to the Discovery for when they get back to the Prime universe. But the one thing also was that throughout that whole scene, and then there's a scene with her and Ash in bed together, it just seemed like the writing was really heavy-handed. I mean, I know it's going to be written a little bit more wieldy because we're dealing with some. Star Trek has always dealt with lofty themes and stuff like that, but people just don't talk the way they were talking or the way she was talking. People just don't talk like that. It got a little, like I say, heavy, ham-handed, ham-fisted, whatever you want to say. Another issue I had, and it hurts me to say this, it really does, because I really like Seneko Martin Green as an actress, but this episode, and with the last episode, parts of the last episode, but with this episode in particular, there were a lot of scenes that I just thought she played it wrong. She seems way too emotional in some scenes, and this is a character who was raised in a Vulcan society, and we see her in previous episodes, particularly episodes in the previous chapter before the break of the season. We see her kind of dealing with or struggling with her Vulcan training and her human emotions. It seems like there's like a split there, kind of, but here she seems extremely emotional, like when she's dealing with, when she's talking to Captain Lorca about having to give the order to kill off the rebel base. Here we go, rebel base. Anyway, she doesn't seem very, Starfleet officer-like. Even when she's dealing with Ash in a scene that we'll get into detail more later, it seems like she's just, a little bit too emotional right off the bat. At one point, Ash and Mike beam down to the planet Harlack. I don't know how they came up with that name. That sounds so corny. But they beam down to the planet Harlack where the rebel base is located. The rebel base is hidden, and for whatever reason, Mike refers to it as active camouflage. I mean, I think us Trekkies know that as simple cloaking device. But unless active camouflage is a term that they've used in previous series, like the episode, there was well, actually in Insurrection, Star Trek TNG Insurrection, where they reveal where Data takes off his suit and you can see his head and this and that, or is that active camouflage? Or I seem like I remember an episode of TNG. I want to say Who Watches the Watchers, where they have like a blind or a hidden observation tower. I think it was Insurrection. Yeah, it is Insurrection. And I just figured that was cloaking technology. Maybe they call it active camouflage in that movie, and that's why they refer to it as active camouflage here. You guys will correct me. You'll let me know if I'm right or wrong about that. Anyway, they get down to the planet and they meet up with Vok, who happens to be the leader of the rebellion. He's the Fire Wolf, I believe they call him. You know, so they don't make it too subtle why they named this episode The Wolf Inside. And you know what's funny is Vok as I'm going to say quote unquote good guy, not very interesting. The way he delivers his lines, it's like the actor, which I'm assuming it's Shazad Latif under the makeup, because I know that he had to play dual roles, and I'm assuming they only hired a stand-in to cover the Vok character when Ash is fighting him, for example. When the camera's on Ash, they have a double in the makeup, and they probably shoot him from the back. So I'm assuming every time we see Vok from the front, that's Shazad Latif. And his readings are just very bland. There's no inflection, not really much emotion. If you think about the Klingons that we're more familiar with, just think about Gowron with the eyes. You have dishonored this council. I mean, the Klingons back then, they spoke with inflection, and they had some oomph about them. This Vok, he's a good guy. I like him as a character. I like seeing him working with these other races or these other aliens, but the line readings are just so flat. Even when he's about to stab Ash on the ground, you die. He just says, you die with dishonor. You dishonor yourselves. I'm like, put something into it. You have dishonored yourself. I mean, do something with the lines. He just reads the lines like he's just trying to get through it. And as when Shazad is playing Ash, he gives a much more nuanced reading of his lines. Vok, he's just blah in terms of his line readings. And like I said earlier about kind of wonky plotting, they take time to try to deal with Stamets' character in the midst of all this other stuff that's going on. And we see this weird scene where after Stamets is revived, I guess, after Tilly tries to inject the spores into him, or she says something like, he's in the spore network, we have to put the spore network into him. And then he dies, I guess, and then he comes back, and then we see some weird scene where he's in some sort of, I don't know, I guess the forest or the palace, I don't know. And he meets another Stamets, who I'm assuming is a mirror version because he's got the gold sash and all that. And is this the character who we saw back in the first episodes, where there was an episode where Stamets walks away from the mirror and there's another Stamets still in the mirror? Is this what we're seeing here? And so does that mean that somehow the mirror universe was tied into that episode back then? It's all very confusing, and I just don't think they did I don't think it lent anything to the episode to show us that. I don't know. It just seemed like they were trying to do a lot, and just seeing that quick moment of Stamets and that wherever he was, and then seeing the second guy come up, and then cutting away from that, it's like, well, what was the point? Why not just wait till you have some time to devote to that and expand it a little bit more? Let's deal with everything we're dealing with here and now. I saw a little bit of character nuance with Lorca. He's such a I don't know what do you want to say? He's such a hot and cold character. He goes either way. You know, because in the last review, I was ranting about how this captain is Starfleet do or die. He's the guy you want to go into battle with. But he kind of just, you know, nonchalantly tells Mike, give the order to kill all the rebels. You know, you do what you have to do. And I think Mike rightfully kind of argues back that, you know, let's find another way. And this is when she gives that, what I thought was an overly emotional speech about all these aliens working together, being led by a Klingon. So I just thought it was interesting. Lorca really does, he leaves you hot and cold. It's like he's willing to kill off all these people. But in his mind, he had a good reason because, you know, he wanted to get back to his universe to help in the battle with the Klingons. So I guess they leave it open that, you know, the end justifies the means, but just seems a little harsh the way he just says, let's do it. Kill them all. Give the order. Unless, as one of our listeners postulated, unless this Lorca is actually the Mirror Universe Lorca. I brought this up, and I'm going to be posting up our newest Red Shirts podcast, which was recorded after the last episode and prior to this episode. But one of our listeners suggested that this Lorca is the Mirror Universe Lorca, and he set Stamets up to do that last jump. Because if you remember, I didn't notice it, but a lot of viewers did. Right before that last jump in the Chapter 1 finale, you could see Lorca's name on the line item for all of the jumps. You saw his name on the last jump as unauthorized or something like that, and they wound up in the Mirror Universe. So this listener, I'm sorry I forget your name, but I give you all the credit. He suggested that, I believe it was a he suggested that this is the Mirror Universe Lorca. He says he believes that because in the episode Letha, where we see Cornwell and Lorca in an intimate moment, Lorca has his shirt off, and he noticed a triangular mark or scar on Lorca's back, which coincidentally could have been created by a portable agonizer. Even though I'm not really certain that that's the case, there's something that happens in the last scene that kind of, I don't know if you noticed it, but we'll talk about that as we move forward. And then despite Lorca telling Mike, you got to give the order to kill those guys down there, you know, because we got to save our universe. In a subsequent scene, Lorca actually says, now Lorca's been going through torture, we don't know how long, but he looks pretty shaken when we first see him in this episode. So we can assume he's been going through multiple bouts of torture. And yet, in the subsequent scene where Lorca is in Mike's ready room or in her chambers, he actually says to her, I know this is hard for you. And see, once again, I'm like, this is my guy. He's going through torture, and he's telling Mike, I know this is hard for you. Wow. Another problem I had with this episode is not so much just this episode, but with this character's arc, is Ash Tyler being revealed as Vok in this manner. If you're going to have him, and I thought it was a brilliant subplot, you're going to have this Klingon infiltrate a Starfleet vessel, and I didn't see that coming at all. You know, up to a certain point. I didn't see that coming. When Lorca rescued him from the Klingon prison, I had no idea that could have been the case of how this ended up, that Ash was actually Vok. To then bring us into the Mirror Universe and use a plot device from the Mirror Universe, him confronting his alter ego, to reveal him, I just thought that was a very anticlimactic payoff, because we haven't seen Ash/Vok do anything as a result of all of the flashbacks we've seen, the gory flashbacks and his transmutation into a human. They didn't really do anything with that, and yet he's already been revealed. I mean, literally, the only stakes that were presented with that whole subplot is that he nearly sabotaged Mike's negotiations with the alter Vok, and then he gets exposed. It just seems very anticlimactic that this is the payoff for Ash's reveal as Vok, that he almost ruins a negotiation with a Mirror Vok. I mean, I would have preferred if you had held that off, the reveal, after he's really created some serious damage for the Discovery vessel, or some serious damage for Starfleet, or something that has to do with Klingons in the Prime Universe. This was such a low-hanging fruit type of thing that I just found it anticlimactic, and I thought the scene with Ash and Mike in the antechamber, or wherever they were after they come off the transporter pad, where they have their confrontation, I just thought it went on too long. I thought Mike was way too emotional. In other words, I think her line readings were way too emotional. I mean, we know that she's going to find out that he's Vok. It just took so long, and I mean, so many multiple flashback jumps. It's like, I was like, okay, let's go. And she's so emotional. She's dressing him down, but not as a Starfleet officer. She used to be number 1 of the Shenzhou, but she's talking to him. She's basically talking to a crew member who was out of line and insubordinate on a away team. So as a Starfleet officer, she should have addressed him like that, but she gets emotional right off the top. And I got to put that on Sonequa. As much as I like her, I got to put that on her choices that she made in that scene. Now, once Ash reveals that he killed Culber, then I could see her kind of breaking down. They peaked way too soon in that scene, and it took way too long, and so the whole scene was played up here as opposed to starting here with just a Starfleet officer dressing down an insubordinate member of the away team, and then it gets up here when Culber's death is revealed. That would have worked for me, and just cutting maybe 2 minutes out of that scene would have worked so much better for me. Now, I've got one question before we get to the reveal, and that is, once Mike beams Ash into space, apparently she must have warned the Discovery to grab him, and she puts the data on his body or in one of his pockets or something. I must have missed all that. I watched the episode twice, as I always do, once while I'm live tweeting and the second time to take my notes and really digest it. How did she get it on him, that little crystal? How did she, at what point did she warn the Discovery to grab him? And how did she warn them that he was actually someone to be considered a hostile force? I must have missed that. I didn't get that. I guess that was off screen. You know, I don't like it when the writers make assumptions like that. Because I'm thinking, well, that's a plot hole. How did they know all this stuff? How did Saru know to look into his pocket and find the data? Anyway, that last scene, yes. Welcome back, Georgiou. And she was looking badass too. I called it. Yes, Philippa Georgiou is the Emperor. And I love Sonequa's reading. I love her expression when she sees Georgiou, the hologram, come on deck. She's like, the f***? And Georgiou's like, you don't bow to your Emperor? And it looks like Mike might be in some hot shit, because I guess Emperor Georgiou was not happy that she had to come all the way over there and see why it took so long to bomb the rebels. And it looks like in the previews, she's going to catch some hot shit. That's what it looks like. With a knife up to her throat, and Georgiou's talking, why are you lying to me? So I didn't dislike this episode. I just thought there were some issues. There was too much good action, too much good cinematography. I do like the reveals. I just thought it could have been plotted better. It could have been written a lot better. I thought some of the writing, like I say, was very overdramatic and ham-fisted. But also, getting back to Lorca, remember I said there was something that happens in the final scene that it made me question Lorca again. Once Mike bows to Georgiou, they cut to a shot of Lorca, and because he's on the bridge, and he looks down at Mike, and I could have sworn I saw like a little smile on his face. Okay, what's up with my man? What's going on with him? I mean, if Lorca is a double agent or something, and this is the Mirror Universe guy, which that little smile will indicate maybe our listener is correct. This dude is he's under some he's deep undercover. That's why I say I didn't dislike this episode, because it gave me enough to make me say, oh my God, I can't wait to see next Sunday's episode. You know, like I said, I thought this episode was flawed, but it made up for it in action, in reveals, in how great it looked. And just seeing Georgiou at the end, I mean, that reveal was just awesome. It looked like something was wrong with her face, though. I don't know what that was. It looked like she had some plastic surgery or something, and it didn't. Her face looked a little weird. I'm talking about Justice League Superman weird, but we'll see. Next week, I'm sure it'll be all straightened out, fixed up. I can't wait for next Sunday. I'm sure you all feel the same, and we're gonna be back here at the same time, same place, talking about it. All right, talk to you then. Bye.